friends. Welcome to the Always Hope podcast, the show that provides solutions to better life that's anchored in faith and science. My name is Dr. Mario Sacasa, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm grateful to have you joining me for another amazing episode today. Well, I've been in practice for, something like 20 years now. And a question that I get often when I'm giving lectures or just talking to people when I tell them that I'm a therapist is, when is it time to go to counseling? When is it time to go to therapy? And I have to say, I use those terms interchangeably, so just bear with me on that. But when is it time to seek counseling, or when is it time to go on medicine? How do I know when I should be getting help outside of my natural resources? And that's what I want to tackle today. I want to be able to provide a real practical episode today, all right? So just to provide some real clear guidelines for you to be able to think through your own experience and to know when is it time to start seeking help outside of just your family and friends. Well, let's just briefly discuss what depression is and what anxiety is, or what the experience of it is. To go into a full-blown detail of what depression is or what anxiety is and its causes will be the topic of another episode where we'll get into discussions for reasons for affective dysregulation. That's really the blanket term that we're going to use. The sense that your emotions take over and you get stuck. And it's that feeling of getting stuck, that sense of being dysregulated, our inability to regulate our emotions, our inability of being able to self-regulate, of being able to move through that difficult kind of pinch of an emotional experience of an episode. The degree to which that difficulty emerges, the duration upon which that difficulty stands, and the degree to which it impacts our occupational, relational, and social capacities is the degree that we would say one has a mental disorder or has some acute symptoms that are really preventing you from being able to live a healthy and functional life. So again, let's just kind of look at this in the context of regulation, the ability to be able to self-regulate our emotions, of being able to know when we're feeling something bad, that we should feel something bad. When we're feeling good, we should feel good. But there are moments when those negative emotions become overbearing and they put us in a state of feeling stuck. That's dysregulation right there. Depression goes at it at a different angle than anxiety does. The way I like to conceptualize depression is that it's kind of like feeling like a weighted chest, a weighted vest, on your chest. It's something that it's like this force that wants to keep you down, like somebody has like a lead boot on you, and everything feels like drudgery. Everything feels like sludge, like walking through sludge. Every little bit of effort feels Herculean in its attempt. It feels that just going down the stairs, just making that cup of coffee, just getting out the door, it requires a lot of energy just to be able to get out of that. And that feeling can be acute, where it's maybe just a couple days, or maybe particularly related to some stress response. Or if it is related to something more pervasive, then those are the things that you want to be able to assess. But nonetheless, let's just talk about that feeling. I've had depressive episodes that have been very clearly related to stress related to work. When work has been low, when I've been struggling to find clarity or footing after a lost job, or some type of failed discernment emerges, that feeling of turning inward on myself and all of those questions and thoughts about what happened, why did I do what I just did, what's the next step, and not having the energy to be able to process and move forward. At least in my experience, that's been the context for it. But I recognize for others, depressive episodes can be a lot more pervasive. They can be certainly genetic in their experience, in their origin, but that certainly it's there. So just that sense of feeling this weight, this lead boot on your chest, this sludge, this drudgery, this feeling that everything requires this insurmountable amount of energy and effort, that feeling is what we would call depression. Anxiety looks differently. Anxiety doesn't necessarily have that low energy, lethargy type of experience, but rather it's the opposite. What anxiety does is that it is an over racing of thoughts. It is an inability to control just the constant attention and awareness of what could be happening. It's hypervigilance to any potential threatening situation, and your imaginative capacities are overtaken by anxiety because all you're doing is thinking about all the potential scenarios, and you think that by overthinking about the scenarios that you're going to get out of the fear response, but you get stuck, and that fear response gets hijacked by anxiety. It's continuous, endless looping of thinking about problems and trying to solve those problems and trying to have a sense as to what potentially could be coming down the pike and trying to be as prepared as possible for them. So both depression in its low energy state or anxiety in its hypervigilant state, when they become too much, what happens is that we get left with this sense of feeling stuck. As I said, anxiety gets us there by paralysis by analysis, as they say, and depression gets us there by just having this complete low energy sentiment and feeling. Now, anytime we start talking about depression, anxiety, or any of these mental disorders, what has to be said is that we just recognize that like everybody has bouts of sadness in life. Okay, everybody has moments when they feel sad. Everybody has bouts of fear in their life, moments where you're about to take a leap of faith, or you're going on a roller coaster, or something you're gonna ask a girl out, or something happens that causes just a little bit of fear. That's okay. All of that is a natural human response. And even with the sense of depression and anxiety, what's happening is that it's just an exaggerated version of that. It's your body doing what it normally wants to do. It's trying to solve problems. It's trying to anticipate problems. It's trying to help you feel safe. But unfortunately, the systems that it's using are just no longer working. The patterns of behavior, the patterns of thought are getting the best of you. So we all certainly have moments of fear. We all certainly have moments of sadness. And I would say that if you live long enough, we're all going to have moments of anxiety and we're going to have moments of depression. Again, it's your more or less, it's your body doing what it needs to do, but we get stuck. And again, I reiterate, that sense of being stuck is what is the problem. So treatment to get us unstuck, treatment that's going to help us to feel regulated, that's going to help us to regulate our emotions, is contingent on the intensity of that depression or anxiety, the duration of the episode, and a degree to which you are unable to function properly because of it. In other words, the degree that you're unable to self-regulate your emotions determines the different treatments needed. I think I said that right. The degree that you feel stuck, the degree that you're unable to get out of that feeling, recognizing that it's there. We can even be aware of it, but sometimes we can't even move out of it. To whatever degree that it's impacting your relational health, your social health, your work health, is the degree that we say, okay, now we got to start looking at different treatment options to help you kind of start moving again and not feeling as stuck again. So there are really three options here. And when we're looking at them, we're looking at levels of interventions. That at the first level, we just want to draw on our natural resources. We'll talk about what this is. The second one is when it's time to probably start moving into something like professional counseling or of something of that nature. And then the third level will be starting to look at medicine and what role medicine plays in conjunction with counseling and withdrawing your natural resources. You can do all of these, of course, in outpatient settings. If it is significant enough and you need to go into an inpatient setting to be able to disengage from the world that you're in, to have the space to focus on that anxiety and that depression, then certainly resources are available to that. But we're not going to talk about when to go to inpatient care. We're going to speak about this in the general sense. So the first thing is recognizing that you have natural resources at your disposal. If you listen to this podcast enough, what you're going to recognize is that I love to speak about how resilient our bodies are. We really are a marvel of just a lot. I mean, we're just a marvel in the sense of what we're capable of doing. And I just want to encourage you that if you're feeling a little low today, or you're feeling a little overly anxious today, I just want to encourage you to and remind you that you are capable, you are more capable of being able to accomplish things than you give yourself credit for. A lot of the thoughts that we have that put barriers before us, they seem to get in the way. But I just want to encourage us and just to offer a little reframe and recognize that you are much more capable than you give yourself credit for. So just offer that and just hold on to that. All right. But the first level, as we said, is what are those natural resources that we need to be drawing upon that we have? Well, first thing is we have community. If you're feeling sad or you're feeling anxious, or even if it's peaking into depression or anxiety, really leaning on the people around you is really important. Leaning into family, leaning into friends, leaning into a church community, people who you feel that you can just enjoy their company. In some cases, it requires you to actually be able to open up and to share if you have really close friends. But I think even just being in the company of people, getting out of the house, being with people that you like, sharing a beer, getting a cup of coffee, going on a run, doing some type of service work, reading a book together, something that gets you out and gets you connected with people alone is going to help you to start feeling better, because it's going to raise that affect. I know that the science is very clear that when it comes to when we feel low or when we feel anxious, one of the easiest ways of being able to regulate that is by feeling connected again, by being in the company of loved ones, of feeling safe and being able to be vulnerable with people. Depending on where your depression or your anxiety, where your feelings are, where your sentiment is, just being around people can fill that dopamine a little bit and give you a sense of energy again, and a sense of life. And it's like, okay, I have some energy again, thanks to the gift of being around good people. But in some circumstances, what you need is to go one-on-one with somebody and just be able to have some time to share your story and open up and articulate what it is that you're going through. Again, either way, what it's going to do is going to help you get out of your head, or get out of your body also. You got it out of your, well, how do I say that? Out of your stinking thinking, getting out of just that stuck feeling, and getting you to be with people. And that's going to give you a little boost of energy, which is certainly going to help. A second natural resource that we want to draw on is exercise and diet. When it comes to food, believe me, I understand that when we feel anxious or when we feel depressed, we just want to reach for the ice cream or the alcohol or the candy or the salty carbs or whatever quick high dopamine thing is in our closet. We just want to eat it. We want to get something that's going to make us feel good in a very quick, short-term energy. That, while as beautiful, it's not really beautiful. I mean, who doesn't love who doesn't love a good bowl of ice cream, right? I mean, we all do, certainly. And of course, it's going to give you a little bit of that sugar rush, a little bit of energy, a little bit of dopamine. But what's going to end up happening is that you're going to crash on the other side of it. And if you eat garbage, then you're going to feel like garbage. It's just the way that it is. You got to make sure that you're balancing that out with some type of healthy food. So if you're struggling with anxiety, struggling with depression, caution the temptation to want to reach for the fast food, to want to reach for the high carb, salty stuff, the high fatty stuff, the high sugary stuff, because it's just your body wanting to get a quick fix right there. If you don't have a healthy diet overall, then that's something that you're going to want to assess, because we know that diet can have a certain impact on our affect. All right. So just pay attention to that, but I refer you to a dietitian if that's something that you want to be attentive to. The other thing with regards to just our natural resources is exercise. And the reason that exercise is important is because when we're in a state of stress, what's happening is that our body wants to fight or flight. It wants to do something. It wants to make some movement. It wants to get something done to get us out of this situation. And that feeling of movement, that feeling of I gotta do something, is something that should be honored. And so when you're in the fight or flight response and we're just stuck in our head and we're on a computer or we're reading a book or we're just inside of our room by ourselves, like that isn't going to cut the mustard. Like you got to get out. You got to go do something. You have cortisol and adrenaline and testosterone and all sorts of other hormones that are pumping through your body. Like go use those things for what their intended purpose is. Go on a run. Go burn that stuff off. Go to the gym. Go lift some weights. Go get some resistance, turn that cortisol into testosterone, start feeling good about the stress that's there. So it's not just overwhelming you. Go do the things that your body actually wants to do. Go move, go do something productive and healthy. That alone is going to help with the stress and help you alleviate the sense of feeling stuck, because you can't feel stuck when you're actually moving. You can't feel stuck when you're actually performing and doing something. It doesn't work that way. So just by working and doing and moving, it's going to alleviate that feeling of stuck. And then you get the added benefit of, after a good workout, having those endorphins and those feel-good hormones start kicking in, because you know that you've done something productive. You know that you've taken care of your body. Your body feels good after a strenuous workout, whether that's a good run or a good weightlifting regimen or whatever other burn boot camp or Orange Theory or Jazzercise or Zumba, what is it? Whatever, pick your poison, right? Whatever it is that feels good, do that, all right? Especially when you're in that state of stress. Again, it's going to get you moving. It's going to get you out of your environment, and it's going to get you out of your head a little bit, and it's going to release all those endorphins. So we got exercise, we got diet. And then the last natural resource here that we have available to us is both prayer and meditation. And we need both. And there's a difference. When we talk about meditation, mindfulness exercises, those things are really important, because what it does is if we practice mindfulness and we practice meditation exercises regularly, what it does is it starts helping us to be able to see and pay attention to when the bad feelings are there, and even the good feelings, and knowing how to just let things go, move things on, knowing when I'm getting stuck, I'm being pulled into a direction, and I know I need to pull myself back, knowing how to ground myself, particularly when I'm feeling a sense of anxiety. A grounding exercise is key, because when anxiety takes over, what happens is that we feel completely lost within our chaos. We can feel completely overwhelmed by all the options, all the thoughts, all the things that are happening. And what we need is something that's going to help us to feel grounded. And a grounding exercise can do that. And that's something certainly that I can explore in a future episode. If you guys want some recommendations and want to do some of these meditations together, we can certainly do that together. Just let me know. Leave a comment below if these are things that you want to explore further, or if you have other questions, or maybe things that I don't say quite right in this episode that you want me to explain a little bit better in a future one. Please go ahead and leave some comments and let me know so we can keep this conversation going. But meditation in that sense is centering, it's grounding. It helps us to calm down. It helps us to make sure that our affect is in a healthier place. If we practice that on a regular basis, what we're doing is we're conditioning our brain to know what that anchor point is, and to condition our brain to be able to get back to that, even when we're feeling dysregulated. So meditation, mindfulness is key. It's not the same thing as prayer. Prayer is when we are bringing these questions before the Lord. Meditation and mindfulness can put us in a state where our mind is calm enough to be able to go into prayer. It can put us in a state where our body is calm enough to be able to then listen to the Lord and put ourselves in a state of prayer. But we need prayer also when it comes to facing anxiety and depression, because what prayer and supplication to the Lord does is it gives us the opportunity to make an offering of the things that we're worrying about, so we're not holding on to them so much. But by virtue of our baptism, we are all priests, prophet, and kings. And so there's a common priesthood to every Christian. And we all have the capacity then to bring these questions before the Lord, to bring the suffering before the Lord, to bring this worry before the Lord. We offer it. And what does a priest do when he makes an offering? He transforms that gift into becoming something holy. That sacrifice that is made is then transformed into something that is holy. And that's what we're doing when we pray. We bring this before the Lord. We're asking him to make our lives holy, to make our experiences, to allow our experiences to be touched by him, by something, by the sacred, by his gift, and then to be able to transform it. What prayer also does is that it allows us to be able to see the forest for the trees. With grace, we can see then the story of our lives as God sees it. And when we can see the story of our lives as God sees it, it gives us a different perspective. It allows us to feel a little bit more grounded. It allows us to be able to know that we're held within the arms of a providential Father. That whatever the situations are that are triggering the anxiety, or whatever the situations are that are triggering the depression, that we know that those circumstances are still contained within the loving reality of God's embrace. And appealing to prayer in moments of difficulty is key, because it allows us to be able to reconnect with the Lord, to bring him into the experience, to receive his compassion, to receive his love and his mercy and his grace, which we need so desperately. Here is just things that you can do on your own. If you're struggling with some depression, you're struggling with some anxiety, go ahead and avail yourself to that. Community, taking care of exercise and diet, and then making sure that you're praying and meditating on a regular basis, so that together with those things, you're able to draw upon just the natural giftings that God has given to you. But maybe you're saying, Mario, that's great. That sounds awesome, but all I got's McDonald's close by, man, and I just can't stop myself when I'm really feeling depressed. Or maybe you're saying, Mario, like I really don't have any friends and I'm not close to anybody. Or maybe you're saying, Mario, prayer sounds great, but man, like when I'm low, it's really hard for me to connect with God. It's really hard for me to even be able to see God and to imagine that this moment is something that he can even use for his goodness. Okay. Hey, listen, fair enough. I get it. I get it. Believe me, each of those circumstances, I've been there. I've been there in my own life. I've experienced them, and also working with clients over the years, I've been able to walk them through those circumstances. So I get it. I get it. I get it. If though this is you, and you find yourself at a point where all your natural resources, your friends, your family, exercise, prayer, it just isn't enough. It's not helping sufficiently. It's giving little boosts, little blips on the radar that feel good, but in the end aren't anything that's sustainable. At that point is when you want to say, I think I need to look beyond my resources here. I've exhausted every tool that I have on my tool belt, and it's time to start looking for something else. At that point is when you want to avail yourself to professional counseling. I mean, again, you can go to counseling even before that, certainly, but I'm just letting you know that at that point is really when you want to start looking for counseling. Because what happens is that we just get stuck within our head. We've tried everything that we can do, and we don't really see any other option or anything else that's going to be working, which is why it's important for us to be able to find a therapist who's knowledgeable of depression and anxiety that can be able to give us a reframe and give us new tools to put on our tool belt as well. Just even making the phone call, honestly, there's a little bit of I shouldn't say placebo effect, because it's not that. What happens is even when we make the phone call, again, it's reclaiming a sense of control. When we are hampered by depression or hampered by anxiety, often we feel stuck. And like I said, the reason that we feel stuck is that because we don't feel like we have any sense of control anymore over what we're experiencing. So even just making the phone call or sending the email or finding somebody puts you back in the driver's seat just a little bit, reclaims a little bit of a sense of control, which is going to be helping you as well. So even just reaching out is a little bit of a therapeutic intervention. Now, why not go to a mentor or a priest or a minister or a coach or teacher or somebody like that? I mean, you can certainly. I think that's a fine place to start. If you want to be able to meet with somebody, just at least start talking through something that's going on, that's fine. But those folks don't have the clinical background that a professional therapist does. They're nice and they're well-intended, and they can offer some really great advice that might be helpful and might genuinely be able to help you navigate through whatever the difficulty is. But a trained therapist is somebody who's taken years of their life to study the theories behind what causes this, but then also has the art as well and the years of practice and the skills that's needed to be able to appropriately navigate. What counseling is it becomes a space for you to be able to focus on yourself. And that sounds really selfish when I say it like that, but let me articulate it a little bit differently. When you meet with a friend and you go out for a beer, usually there's going to be a reciprocity, and it's expected that there's going to be a give and take. You're going to both banter a little bit. You're going to talk about the sports game or the latest thing that's going on with the family, or talking about the kids, and you're just going to share stories back and forth. And maybe if you have a really close friend, you're going to open up a little bit about, man, this has been really difficult for me. I've been really struggling. But even that isn't going to dominate the conversation. It's not going to dominate the night out, because they're going to offer some encouragement, but then they're going to share also their side. And this reciprocity is usually what happens when we go out and hang out with friends, which is great. But when you go to counseling, that reciprocity isn't there. It's not a reciprocal relationship. You're paying somebody for their time and their expertise for you to be able to just sit and process and get the things out and put it out on the table. This aspect of my story, this aspect of my story, this attempt to solve the problem, this attempt to solve the problem. And you're going to put all those things out there. And a skilled therapist is somebody who's going to be a co-collaborator with you. It's going to help pull aspects of the story out of you. It's going to help you to be able to make some connections on pieces of the story. It's going to offer some insight as to maybe reasons why those things could be happening. A skilled therapist is somebody who's able to really see that and be able to help navigate you through the complexities of your own experience. Every skilled therapist is trained in being able to understand theories of the human person, and theories give some explanation as to the origins as to why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, give some interventions to be able to alleviate that, and to have clarity with regards to what are outcomes that we should be looking for. How are we going to be assessing growth along the way? You want to make sure that you have a therapist who has a firm understanding of that. Because yeah, you can go to a bad therapist who's just going to want to sit there and talk all the time and not actually do anything that's worthwhile, not going to guide you in any way forward. They're just going to be completely non-directive, which I don't think is helpful. There has to be some guidance by the therapist who knows what they're doing. So certainly you want to be able to find the right therapist. Listen, I understand the weight of the cross that the Lord brings before us. I also understand the feeling of having prayers that have been left unanswered for many, many years. That's why I've started this podcast. That's why it's called Always Hope, because I recognize that this virtue of hope is something that's misunderstood and something that needs to be reclaimed, even within our Catholic and Christian context. Life is complex. Life is challenging. Life has many intricacies and difficulties. That's why I started this podcast. And if you have enjoyed this show and enjoy what I'm saying right now, then please, I want to encourage you to head on over to drmariosacasa.com. You're going to find a lot of great resources there to help you be able to navigate those unanswered prayers and be able to encourage you to keep on choosing hope despite the circumstances that you may be facing. You catch up on previous episodes of the Always Hope podcast, some that are on YouTube and some that are just audio. You can check out Dating Well if that's an area that you're struggling with and need some resources, particularly to dating. You can also stay tuned for future updates. We have a lot of new things that are coming down the pike. In particular, I'll be starting the membership site for ways that you'll be able to support the show, like a Patreon type page, but it'll also be a place where you can connect with other believers like yourself who may be struggling a little bit with some of these questions and need a little bit more depth and nuance to the challenges that they may be experiencing in their journey of faith. So the Hope Club will be launching soon as well. You can check out all of those things at drmariosacasa.com. Sign up for the emails. I'm not going to spam you, I promise. It's going to be the easiest way for you to stay in touch with the work that we're doing as we are continuing to launch this new platform. So head on over to drmariosacasa.com. Do I encourage Catholic or Christian therapists? Sure, absolutely. You want to make sure you have somebody who has some knowledge of the faith, has some knowledge of the culture upon which that you're speaking from, that can speak to you as a whole person, not just as this emotional entity, but can see your body, mind, soul, spirit all connected and interconnected. And I think that's good. But I also know that sometimes going to a Catholic or Christian therapist, some of them don't like the science aspect of things, and they tend to focus too much on prayer as being the only solution for it. Okay, I'm not saying that's everybody. You just want to be able to find the right person that has a healthy balance, a healthy understanding of what's going on here and can be able to look at this in its totality of the experience that you're going through. Look at everything and say, okay, where do we need to be praying? Where do we need to be growing emotionally? What do we need to be attending to physically? What are the psychological questions and dilemmas that are there? What are the dominant narratives that keep spiking, keep coming up when you get stuck in yourself? How do I really learn how to regulate here? A skilled therapist is going to be somebody who's going to really be able to help you understand all of that. And I think that is why I've been a therapist for 20 years. I would like to think that I'm part of the solution here. I know that counselors at times, we can be labeled for being a little bit too postmodern and maybe being a little bit too left-leaning. Okay, fair enough. I understand that. So you want to just be able to find somebody who's going to meet you where you are, who's going to understand you, isn't going to impose an agenda or isn't going to have a bias one way or the other, but they can genuinely listen to you, hear you. A therapist who's skilled, who's experienced, who has healthy boundaries within him or herself, has enough knowledge to be able to guide you. And when it comes to finding a therapist also, the other piece is really there's going to be a personality match as well. I like to say this often, finding a good therapist is like finding a good barber. You just need to find somebody who understands the intricacies of your head, all right? The barber obviously on the outside knows your hair. They'd be able to work with your head and know where the cowlicks are and all the different things that are there. But once you find a barber or you find a hairdresser, like that's the person you're going to. That person understands what you're asking for, the haircut, and they understand how to execute the thing that you're asking for. That's the person that you want to keep going back to. Similar when it comes to therapists, there can be personality mismatches. You can find somebody who's been recommended and you think that they're good, but you just get into the room and there just isn't that click. And that's fine, because remember, it is a relationship and you want to make sure that you have somebody who you feel that you can trust. You have somebody who you feel you can have confidence in, that you can open up, and that they're creating a space where there's genuinely safety, and there's definitely going to be a sense of privacy and security, but also a sense of wisdom as well. When I train therapists, I often encourage all my therapists to pray for wisdom, because it's wisdom that guides the work that we're doing, of knowing when do we push people, when do we pull back, when do we listen, when do we challenge, when do we offer an intervention, and when do we just let people figure things out on their own. That is wisdom that guides the work that we're doing in counseling. And so I want to encourage you to be able to find somebody. And even if you find somebody and it doesn't quite work out after a few sessions, no problem. Go in and keep looking, because I'm sure somebody's out there for you. Draw on your natural resources. If those aren't working for you, go to counseling. Start being able to have a space where you can process your thoughts, where you can put things out on the table, where you can develop some new skills that are going to help you regulate your emotions, that are going to help you be able to process the experiences that you're going through. Work through that. But maybe going to counseling isn't sufficient either. And maybe you've been going to counseling for a few months and you still feel like you're just stuck, or you're just treading the same old narrative over and over again. It helped initially, it gave you a little bit of a boost, but then as it's kind of waned, it's not really doing anything at that point. Well, that is when I would recommend, let's go to the next level of intervention. And that's where medicine can come into place. I don't view antidepressants or anti-anxiety medicines as happy pills. I know some people joke about that and say, oh, I'm just taking my happy pills or whatever. The antidepressants aren't happy pills. They're not going to make you feel happier. What antidepressants are going to do, though, is that they're going to raise the floor. Any of these medicines to ease our anxiety or ease our depression, what they're doing is that they're preventing that bottoming out feeling from being as deep as it normally would be. We know that when we're stuck in anxiety, as I indicated earlier, we're constantly in a feedback loop of thinking, overthinking, solving problem solving, problem thinking, and we can get stuck in that. And then it can wear us out, and then we start crashing. When we're depressed, we're in that sense of everything feels like I just have to will to keep on going, right? That feeling of depression. What an antidepressant, when it's working right for you, what it does is it just raises the floor a little bit. And so that bottoming out feeling isn't as intense as it normally would be. Let's just say it raises the floor for you 10%. Let's just say that. Maybe it just raises the floor 10% for you. Wouldn't that help? I mean, when you really think about your depression, I mean, it's not nothing. 10% is not nothing. It's not nothing. It's something to consider. And then even if it can raise the floor 10%, the question, though, is, well, what do you do with that 10% of energy? Do you invest that into developing new strategies? Do you invest that into the work of counseling? Do you invest that into healthy lifestyle changes that you have to make? That's the key when it comes to medicine, is that medicine isn't the end all be all. And I agree that we are being overly prescribed these medicines, because what the expectation is that, well, you could just take the medicine, you're going to feel better, and then you go on your life and keep living it as if nothing has happened. Well, that's wrong. That's not the answer. You can't just take the medicine and then keep going and pretend like nothing happened. If you take the medicine and it raises the floor, what are you doing with that extra energy? I'm encouraging you to take that extra energy and invest it into counseling. Invest that extra energy into lifestyle changes that you have to make. There's a reason why you got to the point where you got to. And if you just take the medicine, it's like putting a Band-Aid. It's not actually going to solve anything. You're not going to change. You're not actually going to change the patterns of behavior. You're not actually going to learn anything from the experience that you're going through. Rather, take the medicine so that it gives you a little bit more energy, so that you can invest that energy into things that are actually going to help you move forward, that are going to aid you in understanding yourself, that are going to aid you in being able to regulate your emotions. And if you can do that, well, then the medicine just becomes a short-term solution. Maybe you take it for a few months, maybe you take it for a year, maybe just enough time to be able to get back up and then to keep going. But if you're just taking the medicine, or think that the medicine alone is going to be what solves the problem, then absolutely, I disagree with that. And I recognize that sometimes is people's hang up, is because they hear horror stories of friends or family who've been on these medicines for years and years, and they're not really getting any better. Agreed, because we have to invest in ourselves, And we have to be able to create new patterns of thinking, understand those narratives that might be leading us towards depression or anxiety, recognize what our stress responses are. But if you can't even do the work of counseling because you're so depressed or so anxious, well, then that's where the medicine helps to give you the energy to reinvest. Or maybe you've been doing the work of counseling, but it doesn't seem like it's really clicking. Well, then that's when you want to say it could be that the medicine will help to make some of these changes last a little bit more. The medicine can help to be able to kickstart some of those changes. And once you start creating those new pathways of thinking, and those new changes start happening in our brain and in our body, well, then that stuff starts taking root and that becomes the new normal. And in those moments is when you can start getting off the medicine a little bit and start weaning that process. But I have to say, of course, when it comes to medicine, first and foremost, consult with your physician. Consult with your physician. There's so many different options that are available to you. And every option is going to have some type of side effect, whether it's an SSRI, which impacts serotonin, could impact your libido, Wellbutrin, which works with the dopamine system, can lead to anxiety. I'm not a physician. I'm not that type of doctor, as I tell my kids. And so I don't want to give medical advice on the podcast. That would be completely irresponsible of me. All right. Consult with your physician, preferably find a psychiatrist that you trust, preferably somebody that you can actually talk to about the stuff that's going to understand and know the nuances and the differences between all the different classes of medicines. All right. Of course, when you start medicine, I just have to say this, generally, it's a little bit of a trial and error. I wish there was like some type of testing that could be done to help you know how your body would respond beforehand, but it isn't. You're going to start with one and you're going to see how that feels. And if it works, great, then they'll probably up your dosage. If it doesn't work, then they'll change you to something else. And unfortunately, with a lot of these, particularly the SSRIs and the antidepressants, it takes a few weeks for that stuff to get into your system and actually start taking effect. And you do have to be patient with it. There are certainly some anti-anxiety medicines that you can take on the spot, but even those, you have to be cautious because some of them could be habit inducing. And again, all of those are conversations that you want to have with your physician to be able to get on the right thing that's going to help raise the floor so you can have a little bit more energy to reinvest in yourself, to do the things that you need to do so that you can get healthy again. I feel like whenever I bring up medicine, people start like cringing or something, or there's this wall when it comes to it. And I don't fully understand why. Maybe it's a couple things I think that I've heard over the years that I want to respond to. The first objection is, well, there's a sense of failure with going on medicine. There's a feeling that I can't figure this out on my own, and taking medicine feels a little bit like cheating. But I guess I just want to speak to that and say that no, I don't think so. I mean, when somebody's pancreas can't properly process sugar, we don't call that a failure, do we? We don't say that's a moral failure. We just call that diabetes and get them the medicine, and we tell them to measure their blood sugar regularly and call it a day. And that's it. And do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Similar, when somebody breaks a leg and we put it in a cast, we're not going to be like, oh, there's a moral failure and you can't walk straight anymore because you're in a cast. The cast is there to help protect it. The medicine is there to help you regulate. Again, if you look at it as the end all be all, then that's the wrong disposition. It's not going to be the end all be all. It's not going to be the thing that's going to solve all the problem. But if it can be used like a crutch, if it can be used as an aid, as an assistant to help prop you up a little bit so that you can get the energy to invest back in yourself, well, then at that point, it's just there as a tool just to help you. And I don't see that in any way as being something that we should be objecting to. The other thing sometimes is we feel like I've prayed and shouldn't that be enough? Like, why do I need to go to counseling? Am I lacking faith if I start taking medicine? I don't know, guys. Maybe I just see this a little bit differently, but I like to think that God has given us a lot of gifts, and a lot of gifts even within his natural order, his natural world. He's given us a lot of capacities even within creation. And that means being able to utilize those things. He's given us, they're there for us to incorporate and to utilize as best as we can to help us within our lives. So if counseling and solid psychological theory is available to help us, then let's make ourselves like, let's go do that. If medicine is there to help us, then let's do that also. I don't think availing ourselves to those things takes away from our relationship with God. Rather, it's the opposite. It's the Lord saying, listen, I've given you all these things for your benefit, so make use of them and continue to pray and continue to bring me into the story. And I want to continue to be part of this journey with you. It's not an either or proposition, okay? And so anybody who says those type of things, I want to caution that. I want to put some distance on that, okay? I reiterate, is medicine the end all be all? No. Is counseling the end all be all? No. Is exercise the end all be all? No. Is diet the end all be all? No, of course. But it's a totality. It's the examination of all of these different elements that are going to help us overcome the stress, the anxiety, and the depression that we might be experiencing in our lives. So again, when it comes to medicine, I can't give medical advice. That's not my area of expertise. I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to be able to meet with a physician. Yes, your general practitioner is somebody that you can meet with, but I would just put a little bit more of an emphasis on finding a psychiatrist who you think would be really, really helpful for you. Okay, well, as we're bringing this thing to a close, I just want to offer a few final thoughts here. All right. The first thing is when it comes to depression, when it comes to anxiety, it took a while for those patterns to kick in. Certainly there are genetic predispositions. Some of us are wired to be a little bit more anxious than others. Sometimes our environment is difficult and we have to assess that. Sometimes our upbringing is difficult and we have to assess that. Sometimes our work and current stressors are significant enough that it's pulling us down into a depressive state. The point is that whenever we look at something like this, we're looking at a very complex situation that has a lot of different points around it that we want to be able to assess. Therefore, anybody who tells you that you just come on some weekend, you say these 5 little prayers and it's going to be taken care of, or cast dispersions at this natural process, is that somebody that you want to be listening to? In other words, don't trust anybody who offers a quick fix. I don't offer a quick fix to any of my clients. I say, listen, it took a long time for us to get to where we're at, and it's going to take us a little bit to get out of this. The brain recycles itself every 6 months. So it's going to take a little bit for us just to even start getting some of these new patterns from a neurological standpoint. Psychologically, identity, questions of the sense of self, all of that stuff is a little bit more permanent. It's going to take a little bit for us to readjust some of that thinking that you have about yourself. That doesn't happen in one fell swoop. That doesn't happen over one particular weekend. That doesn't happen quickly. Give yourself time, give yourself space to be able to do that. Similarly, look for somebody who's going to give you a balanced approach, and that's going to take all of this into consideration. It's not just one thing. It's not just prayer. It's not going to be just counseling. It's going to be a mix of things. A therapist should encourage more community engagement. A therapist should encourage healthy exercise and diet. A therapist should encourage praying as well. And even a good psychiatrist will recognize that the medicine alone isn't going to be sufficient. Again, we are complex beings, and we got lots of different levers that we can pull that are going to help us. So let's look at a balanced approach and make sure that whoever you go to for counseling is going to be able to provide that balanced approach for you. And the final piece here, and this is a show about hope, and so I'm going to end with this, which is just to say that God allows it all for a reason. So even if we find ourselves in a place where we're really stuck and we're really struggling with our depression, the growth that comes, the process of going to counseling, of self-discovery, of getting healthy, of listening to what's happening inside of ourselves, the process of being able to pay attention, the process of being able to discern, the process of being able to genuinely hear God's voice is all part of the growth plan for us. God allows it for a reason. And I've touched on this in other episodes and we'll continue to dive into it. I'll say this. I do not make light of how difficult it is to experience depression. I do not make light of how difficult it is to experience anxiety. And I am not saying that if you just pray and you just bring the Lord into it, it's all going to go away. It's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that by knowing that He's there with you, that knowing that He can guide you in the midst of it, that gives some sense of hope. And that gives us an opportunity to be able to lean on Him. If we can do the work of discovering ourselves, of knowing what are the things that I'm attached to and learning how to let go of those things, if we can discover within ourselves what are the false narratives that I've been believing and start learning how to lean into His vision for us, that process is part of what God wants, because ultimately what God is after is our wholeness, is the totality of who we are, is our a completed self, is the fullness of who we have the potential to become. And so the suffering often becomes a journey towards that. If we can see it through the lens of grace, if we can see it through the lens of providence, if we can resist the urge to view it through a lens of nihilism, if we can resist the urge to view it through a lens of cynicism, and those things become very compelling in those moments where we just want to cast it all aside and say it's all just a bunch of bogus mumbo jumbo. But if we can hold on to providence in the midst of it, then I just know, I've seen it in my own life, that we can start seeing the pattern, start seeing where God is leading us and how God is calling us forward. Okay, so in recap, I just want to encourage all of us today that if you're struggling a little bit, please know that you're not alone. And I just want to be able to encourage you to get the help that you need to get, because you don't have to white knuckle it. Veil yourself to your friends, get out, exercise, certainly pray, meditate, do the work that you need to do. But if those aren't working, then go to counseling. Find somebody that you can trust. I'll have a link to the Catholic Psychotherapy Association's, their member directory. It's a great place of being able to find somebody who I think can be of help to you. But then also find a psychiatrist or a doctor if you need to be able to get on the medicine to help raise that floor again, so that you can get that energy to reinvest and start operating a little bit more healthily in your life. If you have found this helpful, then I want to strongly encourage you to please check out my series on overcoming stress and anxiety that I have for sale on goodcatholic.com. When it's been a delight to be able to help people overcome their stress and anxiety responses through the series. And so if it's something that you think would be a benefit to you, then please head on over to goodcatholic.com, search for overcoming stress and anxiety, and use the coupon code SACASA25 to get 25% off your purchase price. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And if you just have another question that you want me to tackle in a future episode, please drop that in the comments. Or maybe something I said in this episode needs a little bit more context or needs a little bit more nuance, then please drop that in the comments also. I read all the comments and happy to continue dialoguing with each of my listeners. And so, my dear friends, wherever you find yourselves today, again, know that you're not alone. Know that I'm praying for you, and I wish nothing more than for you to be healthy, for you to be able to live your life fully as God intends it to be. And we'll just continue to pray and support one another. Well, many blessings. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.